USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
This week on the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, we zero in on a two-game series with Ohio State traveling to Notre Dame.
And we're joined right now by Ohio State head coach Steve Rohlik. Brought his team to the Frozen Four last year. Obviously quite an accomplishment in his sixth year as a head coach. Steve, obviously a season, a few weeks in the book at this point. You have a big weekend ahead of you, but to this point, you've had some pretty interesting opponents. I look at Arizona State as a place that you went, one of the tougher places to play, I think, as a road game. A tough series against UMass, and then Bowling Green this past weekend. Take me through what the season has been like to date this point.
Well, I guess first and foremost, it is a new season, and time to turn the page. And last year was great and everything, but again, people got to understand it's a new team, different chemistry, all those things. And I think you hit it on the head. I mean, tough Arizona team. They're very good. It's a tough place to play. And UMass. I mean, again, they got some difference makers, and I think they got a chance to be in the tournament. I think the team we played this weekend has got a great chance to be in the tournament. So we've had some great opponents. We've had a great schedule here, and it's not going to get any easier.
When you're building that non-league schedule, I know you have to build it so far out. You probably don't even know what you're getting in terms of opponents, but obviously you ended up building a schedule with three teams right now that are all above 500, all playing well. Is it a good test, I guess, when you really look at the schedule, what you've had to date, especially for a team that, comes off a good year and maybe you need, a sense of, reckoning to see where you are at this point this season?
Well, again, I mean, it's a great test for us. College hockey is so competitive right now, top to bottom, and I think we see that across the board. And when you do your scheduling, you schedule good programs. Everybody does a good job, and you can't tell when someone's going to be at the top or not. You just got to plan on your playing great programs, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now.
We're talking with Steve Rohlik from Ohio State, and I look at the scoring at this point, Steve, and I can go almost down to, I believe, 8 or 9 in your chart in terms of who has put up points. A lot of experienced players, juniors and seniors. I guess that says a little bit about what your team is made of, but I assume that's probably a point for a coach that you feel good, that you know that your upperclassmen are there, they're ready to perform, they're ready to go.
Well, people again forget. We do have some upperclassmen. We do have some guys that have come back and played a lot of games for us. We also lost 6 very good players, 6 seniors that played a lot of games for us. So we're just finding our way. I mean, again, each team, I think, has its new identity, and that's what we're searching for right now. But again, at the end of the day, it is going to be our senior leadership, and that's the one thing that I can count on. I like our room, I like our culture, and I like our leadership.
Steve, a couple of members of your junior class, Carson Meyer, obviously a transfer, and Tanner Lazinski from last year's team. Everybody remembers him. They're right back at the top of the scoring sheet again. What do those guys mean to this junior class?
Well, I guess one, Carson Meyer, who just transferred in. So we actually, we knew of him before and all that. We're very fortunate to have him. I think he's a big piece of the puzzle here. Tanner, obviously, is a big horse, and he put up great points for us last year. He's such a catalyst for us, and he's really just scratching the surface where I think he can actually go. So it's exciting. They're 2 very good players, but they're 2 of 27 right now.
Back end, you've had Sean Romeo, who did a lot of your work last year, and Tommy Napier and net goaltending. You've obviously got a couple of horses you can ride. What are your thoughts on the back end?
You know what? I like all 3 of our guys. I mean, Rome's had such a fantastic year last year. Tommy Napes came in when he was called upon. I think it was 5 games, and he did obviously exceptional. And this year we're just kind of been riding both of them, and we're going to kind of see where that goes. But certainly I got faith in those guys.
When I look at the schedule, obviously to this point it's been tough, but this weekend obviously a very difficult opponent, Notre Dame. They've played very well, but both teams are coming off of weekends where they probably weren't the strongest weekends. They weren't the weekends both teams wanted to have. How does that factor, or does that even factor? Is this now just kind of a, let's put it behind us, now it's the weekend ahead of us?
Well, I think both teams realize they both played very good teams. They played a great Minnesota Blue team. We played a great Bowling Green team, but that's over. I mean, it's time to move forward. It's time to prepare. And, neither team likes losing hockey games. And so I think, each coach is thinking they're going to get the best from the other team right now. And obviously Jeff Jackson's done a phenomenal job with Notre Dame and their track record. And now jumping into the Big Ten, we got to make sure that we're playing our best Friday night.
From everything you know about that team, everything you know about Jeff Jackson and what his teams typically bring, what are the characteristics that you expect out of these two games?
Well, the first thing, is discipline in their systems, what they do. They're just so very well coached, and they don't beat themselves. I mean, that's always been a Notre Dame team. They got one of the top goaltenders in the country, and he proved himself last year. So we don't expect Notre Dame to miss a beat, and, we know that we got to be prepared.
We're speaking with Steve Rohlik, head coach at Ohio State in his sixth season behind the bench. Last year, Notre Dame joined the Big Ten and seemed to be a missing piece for that league. What are your thoughts on where the Big Ten's progress is now with Notre Dame in it, and now even possibly adding some teams down the road?
Well, again, adding Notre Dame was exciting, for the Big Ten. I mean, it just adds to our brand, from facilities to academics, to the overall experience of Big Ten hockey, being a student athlete. It's just tremendous. And you saw what happened last year with 3 teams being in the Frozen Four. And I'll tell you what, all 7 teams could end up winning our league. That's how good I think our league is and how competitive it is. So our league's come a long way, and the coaches in the league, I have a lot of respect for the players in the league, and that's just what makes you better. You have to be better as a coach, and you have to be better as a player if you want to win hockey games in the Big Ten right now.
One of the things that was a rule change this year that surprised a lot of us when it showed up was adding the 19th skater, and we've enjoyed talking to different coaches how they're approaching it. It looks like you've used an extra forward all the way through. What are your thoughts on how to approach having the extra skater?
Well, again, I mean, I think it's a test phase, really. We do have some depth up front, so, we've been able to throw that extra player there. I know a lot of teams, might throw a defenseman out there. We just kind of rolling with it right now. It seems like it fits us the best. Not to say that we wouldn't change if we need to. That's something we got to continue to evaluate. But, right now we've been kind of throwing in that extra skater up front. And, again, this is a work in progress. And with just doing this year so far through 6 games, I think it's something that we got to game to game and as a coaching staff look at if this is going to be continued by us.
Talking to Steve Rohlik from Ohio State. You'll play Notre Dame in 2 games this weekend. Both teams NCAA Frozen Four teams a year ago. I know you mentioned that the games are in the rear view, but when you go to a Frozen Four, especially for a team that hadn't been there for a while, what does it mean to a school? Is it too early to even understand what it means to you? But I assume there has to be some sort of an impact that playing on that big of a stage does for your program.
Well, I mean, I would lie if I say it didn't. It was a phenomenal journey. I just felt really good for our players, really good for our alumni. There's been a tradition there at Ohio State, and there's been a lot of people that have put some bricks in the wall there. And it's our job to try to carry on that tradition. And fortunately, we kind of pushed it to the next level this last year, first time in 20 years to get there. So it was an honor and obviously a privilege to get that far. And I just felt good for our team, our program, and obviously, the university.
Well, the battle continues this Friday and Saturday night at Notre Dame for Ohio State. Saturday night's game on NBC Sports Network. Steve Rohlik, as always, we enjoy having you on the show. Thanks so much for your time. Good luck this weekend and obviously the rest of the way.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
That's Ohio State head coach Steve Rohlik here on the USCHO Game of the Week podcast. And Jim, that is our game of the week, a 2-game series, Ohio State at Notre Dame.
You know, when you pick these games as games of the week, you hope that both teams are coming in on big hot streaks. These teams aren't. You know, Notre Dame, they're coming off being swept by Minnesota Duluth, and Ohio State only taking 1 point out of a weekend series with Bowling Green. So I think both these teams are going to be very hungry. I think it'll be a good atmosphere at Compton. The one thing that you always kind of worry about is, you know, the football mentality at Notre Dame, the fact that they're still kind of in football mode. And I know they have a game in Chicago against Northwestern on Saturday night. So I still think it's going to be a pretty fun time there this weekend. These teams should be geared up. This is Big Ten play for them.
I think Compton Family Ice Arena is one of those top 10 college hockey arenas you just have to find a way to get to sometime in your fandom career. Well, this series, home and home, might have been our game of the week, and it is right up there in interest. Home and home, Minnesota State and Minnesota. Minnesota State at number 4 this week in the poll, Minnesota at number 10.
You know, Minnesota State has just been playing such good hockey at this point. I think Minnesota going into last Saturday might have felt pretty good about themselves. You know, when you play those neutral site games that aren't really neutral site games as they did against North Dakota, they probably felt a little bit the underdog, and you know, they had a tough go of it. Didn't love the ice, didn't love the arena, whatever it was. You would think that this would be a hungry Minnesota team for certain. They'll get to play at home on Friday night. That's always big to start a series. I think that teams, you know, usually if you're going to play the home and home, you love to start at home. They want to get that first win, but this Minnesota State team is just tough. They are playing some grinded out hockey. I really love the way they're playing. I think they're a scary team as the season goes on, and that should be a good weekend of hockey out there.
Well, fresh off North Dakota beating old rival Minnesota in Las Vegas on Saturday night, they take up with another rival, and this time it's a pair of games at Engelstad Arena as the Wisconsin Badgers, this week number 16 in the USCHO.com men's ice hockey poll, take on number 14 North Dakota.
Yeah, for the Fighting Hawks, it's just kind of an old WCHA parade that doesn't end. And they might as well just keep playing these teams that were great rivals and have great atmospheres. And you know that it's going to be packed at the Ralph again this weekend. I was really impressed with the way their crowd traveled last weekend. I'm hearing rumors that the next destination game might be in 2020 in Nashville. For North Dakota. That's another great city that'll attract a big crowd. But there's going to be an unreal crowd in Ralph. And now Wisconsin gets to show we are a team. We are a team to be messed with. We are the team to be reckoned with. They've played some decent hockey to this point. They beat some good opponents. Now they can go into North Dakota, play a team that we know is a very good hockey club, and have to play them on enemy ice. This is a big challenge for the Badgers.
It's only a 17-and-a-half-hour drive from Grand Forks to Nashville, so that's nothing for a North Dakota fan.
Oh, God. They will sell out that NHL building.
Another game that has a match or a matchup between a ranked team and an unranked team, although one that's been just outside the poll, Colorado College has St. Cloud in for a pair in NCHC action.
We've talked about Colorado College a little bit and the fact that they've kind of been knocking on the door, that they've been a decent team. Obviously, St. Cloud State is playing very good hockey. I think if they don't lose last Saturday night against Northeastern, they lost a third period lead to Northeastern. I think if they don't lose that game, they're probably number 1 in the country. It would be it would be a much more split vote than it was. Colorado College, they've played some good games, and they tied and beat a New Hampshire squad that the more I'm learning about New Hampshire, that's not a bad team. And obviously they had a win over Huntsville, which that has not been a strong program. A win over Air Force, which we always know that's tough. That's a little bit of a rival. And then a win and a loss at Anchorage. You know, the first game they scored 10 goals and they proved that they can score a ton. The second night wasn't as easy. I like Mike Havlin as a coach. I think that he's done some fun things with this team. I think that this team maybe needs a little bit of an identity. And when you have a big team, it's a league matchup. Here we are, first week in November. You got St. Cloud State coming in. I wouldn't be surprised to see Colorado take one of these two games, or at least grab a point out of this series. I know that becomes moral victories and stuff like that, but I think that Colorado College has a chance to prove that they're better than a lot of people think this weekend.
Boston University head coach Albie O'Connell is still looking for his first win as a head coach at his alma mater. He travels to Northeastern with the Terriers on Thursday and hosts Northeastern on Saturday. While Boston University's not ranked, we know they still are a good team and probably will be making some noise at the end of the season. How critical is this series for both teams?
You know what? For BU, obviously they want wins. They want to start getting wins. I think Albie would love to get the gorilla off his back and get that first win. That's nice to do. I think the program itself just wants to start heading in the right direction. They've had a lot of tough games. They've had good opponents that they've played thus far. On the other side, Northeastern, they got a great weekend last weekend to win over UMass Lowell on the road, and then they salvaged a win against St. Cloud State after falling behind. They find a way to come back in the third and win the game in regulation, and that was a huge win for Northeastern to take down a highly ranked opponent. For Northeastern, knowing these two teams in the landscape, Boston University, their rival is obviously Boston College. But for Northeastern, their rival is Boston University. BU will not take Northeastern on as their rival, but I can tell you that every Northeastern fan thinks that BU is their rival. So they will pack the building on Thursday night. They will absolutely send a great crowd on Saturday night to Boston University. These are the series that Northeastern loves to play. This is a beanpot rival for them. So you can expect it to be maybe a little chippy. You can expect it to be a really hard-fought battle. But both teams would love to come away with a sweep of the series. I think just a sweep is so difficult when you have these two teams that I think are probably pretty evenly matched. It's so early in the season to be playing a Hockey East game like this, but this game really has a lot of weight in the league.
I'm going to throw in one more matchup at you that we didn't discuss ahead of time, so don't be too surprised. The newest two teams in college hockey face off this weekend. 5-0 Penn State, ranked number 6 this week, takes on a 6-2 uprising, upsurging, insurgent, whatever adjective you want to use, Arizona State.
Really interesting, this series. Paula Weston and I talked about it a little bit in Tuesday Morning Quarterback earlier this week. I would love to see this game played in Arizona, to be honest with you. I'd love to see how Penn State goes into that atmosphere. I think Penn State grabs a huge advantage by being at Pagula. That is just a facility that I think is tough to win in. But I don't put anything past Arizona State right now. They are playing good hockey. I love the fact that Greg Powers has, in his 4th year, turned this from a club team to a true Division I competitive team. They're still looking for a home. Every weekend, I think they go out with a little chip on their shoulder because they want to prove to people that we belong in your league. And this is just another example of Arizona State. They're going to walk into Big Ten country and say to the Big Ten, hey, we can play with you. We belong in your league. I think a win there would go a long way for that.
And finally, earlier this week, we spoke with Army West Point head coach Brian Riley, and the great rivalry in hockey for the military academies is Air Force and Army in ice hockey. Air Force travels to Army for a pair of games. They'll also play a couple of times later in the season out at Air Force.
I think, and Brian brought this up in our podcast earlier this week, the word that kind of summarizes this series is respect. These teams will battle it out hard, tooth and nail, every game, every minute on the ice, but afterwards they respect each other. To the fact that I think he said on Saturday night they actually have their post-game meals together. They and there'll be pomp and circumstance. There will be alma maters played, and there will be seniors who know that this is a special moment. Maybe not as special as January when these two teams play again in the Air Force. It's the last time for them to face each other in the regular season, and I think that takes on a little bit more of that Army-Navy football feeling. But these are games that these two teams love to play. They love to hate each other on the ice. They love to love each other off the ice, and I think that's what makes this such a special rivalry. And anybody that gets a chance to go to one of these games, go, because it really is a special time for both of these clubs and anybody that gets to experience it.
Tate Rink is a great place to watch a hockey game. And besides having the meal together, the teams will line up alternating players from each squad at center ice in a circle facing outward and salute the crowd at that too. Huge points on the line in Atlantic hockey. Army in first place right now, having gotten 7 out of 8 points in 2 road trips. Air Force at 2-2 would like to gain some ground. Well, that's it for the Game of the Week podcast. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger. We'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of US College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.